Hi, everyone, and welcome to Traveller Mayday 2026. Today, I'm joined by the creator of Traveller, Mr. Marc Miller. Welcome, Marc.
Hi, thanks for having me, Frank.
Thanks for coming back, and thanks for creating Traveller. So, Marc, can you give us a brief summary of the origin of Traveller?
I guess I've told this story a bunch of times, but I grew up loving science fiction, and I grew up in the golden age, literally the 50s and the 60s. The story I tell is I just consumed science fiction. That my teachers tried to have me read sports stories or classics, and nothing grabbed my attention like science fiction. So I read everything, and wow, when Dungeons and Dragons appeared like a lightning bolt and just revolutionized how we thought about things. After about a year or two, I said to my partners at Game Designers Workshop, we should do Dungeons and Dragons in space. I think that's literally the words I used. And because we were a very loose conglomeration of designers with all kinds of individual freedom, they said, sure, go ahead. And over the next year, I just worked away at building the original Little Black Books. I wanted it to be everything. I wanted it to be GURPS. I wanted it to be role-playing for science fiction. My goal was any story you read, we could do. And that doesn't work. Very soon it turned into space opera. We had people running around, but once you have a Navy, then you have to have a government that runs the Navy, and an Army, you have to have a government that runs the Army. That turns out to be an empire, and it just grew. I think the magic of Traveller is that everybody understands what's going on. It's not some secret cabal of people who control the future. It's possible that that's there, but people understand this structure. It's fantastic. It's far future, and yet everybody understands what they should do, and they can start playing almost immediately. So,
Was there something that inspired you to make the product in the modular way that it ended up?
I spent 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years doing Traveller 5th edition, and I don't think I could have stayed alive in 1976 waiting until 1981 to produce a perfect role-playing game. I say perfect. There's this phrase: the best is the enemy of the good enough. If we had waited until Traveller was perfect, it would never have come out. Everybody agreed it wasn't perfect, and everybody agreed it was good enough. And everybody had a good time playing it, and their feedback is what helped shape where Traveller went. I'm glad we went modular instead of just having the answer in one, trying to have the answer all at once.
Was there a reason that you chose the smaller format, it's called like a digest format instead of like the big hardback books like D&D was doing at the time?
Well, but they weren't doing them at the time. When I write,
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true.
it was, I copied the D&D format perfectly. I mean, I remember typesetting the Traveller material that I had and looking at over to the right at my 3 little wood grain covered booklets from D&D.
Right.
I
My
think
first experience was with AD&D, so that would be the hardbacks. But I understand there was paper before that, when it was still chainmail, I guess, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you can really struggle to make things perfect. But Gary's initial take on how to explain his role-playing game was pretty much spot on. I mean, you start out with characters and combat, men and magic, treasures. He distilled everything down into something basic that anybody could play. Traveller was put out and it was out for a year before we had any supplements. And there were, I think we shipped 10,000 copies of that original little black box, and people were just playing it and building their own adventures and their own stories, because it kind of sang to what they wanted. A lot of people out there that were already had D&D or had been exposed to it, but they didn't want fantasy, they wanted science fiction. And this one just, I say, sang to them, said, play me. And they knew how to play.
That's what happened to me. I mean, my first game was D&D. I enjoyed it, but and I like Lord of the Rings, but I really kind of struggled to read the book. It's a lot of detail. I was like, oh, they're still singing, skip. Oh, no, they're telling stories, skip. But for me, I like science fiction. Just always was more interesting. So when I discovered Traveller, it just clicked. It's like
there's some boring science fiction out there too, you know.
Oh yeah, I know. I never found anything. No, it's not that it was boring. It's just I wanted to get to the meat of the story, and I understand that through the songs and stuff, there he's relating the history and trying to give.
Well, it leaves you something to come back to 10 years later and read and really enjoy.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I always read for plot. I didn't read for character. I read for plot. Mm-hmm. If they stop and told us the backstory of some guy, fine, skip. When did the spaceships take off again?
Exactly. Was it difficult to abstract the rules, or come up with, star system star system design, or deciding what's the best ratio for having so many planets in a subsector, or zones versus the rifts?
It was all seat of the pants, certainly. It was modular. I mean, here's characters. We did character generation. I did character generation. I enjoyed putting it together. It just kind of fell into what should we have. Some of it was just concepts. We didn't have Star Wars, and we had Star Trek, but not Star Wars, and we had a bunch of B movies. But I think Star Trek influenced us a lot. People wanted to be Captain Kirk. They wanted to be Scotty. And to get there, you had to have, I don't think anybody wanted to create an 18-year-old recruit to the Starfleet and then play 24 years until he's an expert engineer. I think that's fun doing that to become a higher and higher level wizard or a higher and higher level fighter. But people weren't ready to do that. I didn't think they were ready to do that for Star Trek, for Traveller. So I had to have some way to accelerate them through their life. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't have skills. It just, you learn magic spells or whatever, or you get better at what you're doing. But a modern world, a future world, is different than a fantasy world. I just kept taking D&D and filling in the blanks that they didn't apply, where they didn't deal with a modern or an advanced civilization. And Traveller players do that all the time. They find something they want to do and they fill in the holes and make it work for what they want to do. I think that's the native imagination of gamers, that they're not bound by the rules. They really make things work when they want to make them work.
Give you the idea of having death during character generation.
Yeah, we keep coming back to that because everybody wanted to be
famous.
a 65-year-old admiral, and they would just roll until they got one, and so everybody, it was an expedition of admirals going off adventuring. They never got that far because I saw that problem immediately. And I couldn't there were other ways I could have done it, I suppose. I could have said, roll to see how old you are, and that's going to tell you how many skills you have. But that seems kind of arbitrary. So sure, you can try and be an admiral, but there's a chance you're going to die along the way. And we can be serious here for a minute. I was an Army lieutenant. I went to Vietnam. I came home. I survived it. But I had a friend who was an Army doctor. He was a captain. And one day he went out to one of the advanced bases and his helicopter crashed and he was dead. It wasn't his fault. He wasn't shooting at anybody. Nobody was shooting at him. The aircraft, the helicopter rotors fell off. It crashed and he wasn't alive anymore. And all of that work at medical school and his life and his family was gone. And that's pretty sobering. There's a lot of sobering things in travel if you stop and think about them.
Right. That's something that I used to tell players. They're like, "Wow, it's crazy that you can die in character generation." I would just say, "Well, space is a dangerous place.
Yeah.
You don't know what's out there. Cosmic rays can kill you. Malfunction of your ship, your back suit, alien microbes, and could be anything. The fact that you're still alive at the end of character generation is actually amazing."
And I think it tells you in the very, very first stages of your playing the game that this is a dangerous place and you should be careful.
Right. Yeah, and if you keep pushing your luck and you have that that gambling part, I'm going to push my luck, push my luck, push my luck. Oh, now I'm getting injured. Now I'm getting old. Now I hurt myself. Now my back.
I've lost money at Las
died.
Vegas on that principle.
Right.
Push my luck, doesn't work.
Right. Were there any part of the rules that were difficult to pin down? Was there like a section that you like really had to like work at?
That's so long ago. I don't. It was interesting. We had a working game company with people designing games all day long. And of course, that's not all you did because you still had administration. You still had to get things polished and then taken over to the artist and then supervise them as they put it together and then proofreading. There was a lot of work going on. And so we only had one typesetting machine, and it's a very expensive machine. I ended up working all night long. I would come in at 4 o'clock and work until 2 or 3 in the morning. And everybody thought I was lazy or taking advantage of something. I don't know. But I worked very hard for a year putting this together. And sometimes I would just work on this section and get to some point, I think I was right. And then I would print it out and I would kind of labor over it and decide how this doesn't work. So it's just hard work. It's just working at it, hard work, fun work, enjoyable work, imaginative work, kind of in a vacuum. How does this work? And then I would, in those times where my time and the office time overlapped, I would show it to people and they would say, "Oh, yes, but what about this?" And then I say, "Oh, gee, but I don't remember the details."
I remember printing out like subsector maps. I'd go down to Kinko's and print and make copies of blank subsectors. And then I had, I don't know, an office shop or something. I had these like futuristic transfer letters, and I could label all the, because this was kind of before desktop publishing. And so I would go in and I would use these rub-on letters, and I would make a full sector map with the high-tech font and stuff. And yeah, it was enjoyable. That's kind of something else that's kind of a weird tangential thing from Traveller is like Traveller like feeds people's creativity in that way. Like I really exercised a lot of my and still do my desktop publishing skills with Traveller. Just at first, just printing up stuff for myself and my players, But I always wanted it to look good and stuff like that. So, and also I learned metrics by playing Traveller. There's a lot of these like side skills by playing.
I was just reading a series of novels by an author that I really enjoy from the 80s. And he routinely mixes, talks about this is a mile long and this is, 2 meters high. He just picks and chooses which system he's going to use depending on how he felt. And I've actually talked to him about it. He says, I was a pulp science fiction writer. I cared about meeting the deadline and getting that check. He was incredibly imaginative, but perhaps not very rigorous.
I've noticed that folks from England often say it's a mile down the road or whatever. They don't say it's a kilometer, but then other measurements are back to metric. So I always wondered, like, what's that about?
Yeah, I wonder what their schooling is like. Yeah.
So let's see. Do you know how many little black books or how many there are in the series that Digest Group?
So the little black books, if you think about it, I actually have bear with me, this is fun. I have to go to my archives and get things. See, this is
Sure.
the official guide to classic Traveller, and it shows you pictures of all of those
Wow.
things, and like a 20-word description of each one, and it shows you what's in all of those things.
The ones with the trade dress, are there like 50 of those or something, or 30? It looks like quite a bit.
Oh, well, I don't know the total. I know the components. So there are 13 adventures, and there were 13 supplements, and there were 6 or 7 double adventures, and then there were 8 alien modules and 4 or 5 games, and 8 rules books, counting the original 3, plus the Traveller book and Deluxe Traveller and all that. So 50 or 60 overall. Charles Dickens made a fortune using that subscription method of selling his novels. Well, I think we did the same thing with Traveller. I think it was much more manageable to go down to the game store every month or so and get a new module, a new book, and take it home and enjoy and read it and play it. And it didn't overwhelm you. And everybody was focusing on Mercenary this quarter, and everybody was focusing on an adventure to some world in the next quarter. So it was very involving with people. We are so spoiled by the internet today on being able to talk to people all the time about everything we care about. It was by mail. We would get letters, and people would send us their spaceships and their sectors and their information. And it was just fascinating reading what people were putting together.
Do you remember getting those first letters and like, well, what is this? And people reaching out and sending you weird stuff like that?
I remember getting a very angry phone call laced with profanity from the executive director of the Travelers Aid Society, wanting to know what is this thing about lions and dogs running around doing things.
Oh no. Well, I don't know about the dog people in sci-fi pop culture, but I do recall the Kazinti and other feline designed races, I suppose you'd say. So that's a staple, but that's hilarious.
He was the real Travelers Aid Society, and he was really mad. And I never heard from him again, so I don't know what happened.
So, what do you think about? Okay, so let's kind of advance to nowadays. So last year you retired from Traveller and Soldier. Retired, quote unquote, yeah, and sold your license to Mongoose.
That's right. We've been working with Mongoose for close to 20 years.
Mhm.
And I'm 20 years older than when that started. Um, you know, some years ago, Greg Stafford died. And within a week or so, Chaosium issued a statement that Greg, in his planning, had taken care of things, and there was a succession plan that the Chaosium would continue, that Greg's works would continue, and we would still have all that. And I think that we can worry about what's going to happen if Gary Gygax dies or if Marc Miller dies or something. And so I had been working with Mongoose for some time. They were clearly the right candidate. I have some standards about what should be done, how things should be done. Quality, both in quality and in I would say, morality, imagery, and offensive imagery. And they just really were on board with everything I was talking about and didn't give me a fuss. And I just was very pleased with it. And so we finally met at Gen Con. I don't know which one, but Gen Con, and came to an agreement. And so we transferred everything to him, and he runs it. And he's very generous because he respects me as a designer and says, Mark, you can do anything you want. We like hearing from you and seeing what you do and putter around and do things, and we enjoy it. And if you have anything you want from us, you tell us. But I'm retired rather than full time do this. I have a wife and I have children and grandchildren, and I'm enjoying my life. And I get to enjoy all of it, the family part and the traveler part. And I sometimes I wish that Traveller were real because it would be fun to do all this stuff.
um, now that it's been transferred over, I've seen some interest in the community for reviving classic Traveler and bringing breathing life back into that, because there are different camps. People have the edition they prefer. I always prefer to stay on the current, whatever the current version is. But some people still play classics, some people still play Mega Traveler, T4, T5. Where was I going with this? So they would like to see Classic Traveler, not revamped, but maybe more modules put out for it, or maybe there's some missing supplements that were always wanted to be made, or that people wanted later after the business closed or whatever. So
Yeah,
this might be an opportunity for them to do that.
everybody has their edition that they prefer. I'm not sure which edition I prefer, because I dabble in all of them and I enjoy all of them. I print a book of it's a 144-page compilation of the Three Little Black Books. And it's a great introduction. In fact, I had a guy who teaches at MIT and runs a seminar on role-playing games for people. It's just a quick seminar to introduce them to it. So I just packed up a stack of these original Travelers and sent it to them. It's a great introduction. Every kid, not every boy, every kid today gets to be at 10 or 11 and is exposed to role-playing games. And some of them, it catches on and they love it and they want to do it. And other people, it leaves them cold and they don't care. Fine. But the same thing with Traveller, that I can put any edition of Traveller in front of you. The Little Black Books is a great example. It'll catch your imagination or it won't. You'll enjoy what's happening, in which case there's a universe of things that you can play with. I know that Mongoose is talking about doing a facsimile set for 50th anniversary, where you would get the three little black books in the original form, and a Journal of the Traveler's Aid Society, and a couple of supplements, enough to actually sit down and, with nothing else but some dice, enjoy playing Traveler. And then you're hooked or you aren't. But, I don't want to hook the people who don't care. That's not fun. But some of us, you and me and a couple other people that we know, we would enjoy sitting down and doing something. And it would just work. And those are the people that I'm trying to get. Those are the people that Mongoose is reaching out to.
What do you think about gaming in pop culture, like D&D resurgence through Stranger Things? I've seen like newscasters say like so and so is the Sauron of blah blah, or like and all this like fantasy and science fiction stuff being more referenced in pop culture. I don't know if you notice it, but
okay. So this is one of those stories I think about, that when I started in gaming, and it was early in gaming, we had it was board gaming, it was war gaming, it was either chainmail from Gary Gygax or miniatures, Napoleon.
Grenadier. Did you ever play those sand table games with little tanks and stuff?
And then it turned into Panzerblitz and Stalingrad, and there were some people liked socializing, and the games were really characterized by game clubs, because you have to find somebody else to play with, and so you have to meet regularly, and you do that. And the tone was World War II, Germans versus Russians mostly. I mean, there's all kinds of games, but most of the focus was World War II, and it was Nazis, and some people were kind of misled by the regalia and a lack of the educational system telling them about the Holocaust and the atrocities of World War II. And there were a lot of swastikas floating around on games. And Gary Gygax saved us because he let these people be evil wizards instead of Nazi generals. And I think many of those kids moved over to that. And it's okay to be an evil wizard.
As long as you're playing at it.
Yeah, nobody cares. But given, I mean, if the trend had kept going the other way, it would be a prohibited hobby today, because parents would not want their children to play Nazi generals. So we owe, it's a strange part of our debt to Gary and Dave Arneson and even David Wesley, that they gave us something that we could play, that far better for people to work out their issues in role playing than in real life. And
that reminds me of you ever played Ace of Aces?
Yes.
Are you familiar with that game?
Yes.
That came with like a Red Baron versus like the Allied biplanes or whatever, and I never wanted to be the Red Baron. I didn't want to be the bad guy, even though he was cool,
But some people did. Some
people did. Thankfully, when I played that, I always found somebody who wanted to be the Red Baron. That was a great mechanic on that game, and then I guess it was adapted for Lost Worlds.
Yes, they kept using it for all kinds of things.
I haven't seen it in a while. I wonder whatever happened. So let's talk about some other current business. There's an effort to convert Traveller into D&D 5th edition. What do you think about that? And how was that?
Yes, I mean, we should convert D&D to Traveller 5th edition. I think that would be fun.
Mhm.
Um, the guy doing this conversion of D&D, of making Traveller work with the D&D 5th edition rules is Tim Brown. He literally used to work for me at Game Designers Workshop. I've known him now for 40 years. He's got a great resume in terms of successful things, both Traveller and role playing. He worked at TSR. He's a good overall guy, and he has taken on this project. And so let me digress here. From 25 years ago, I happened to meet Steve Jackson in a hallway at a convention. And my negotiations and interactions with Steve Jackson are always about 5 minutes long. And they are, the culmination of years of thinking about things. I had literally met Steve 20 years before that when he was first working on what ultimately would be GURPS. And he made GURPS work. And the people who play GURPS are just dedicated to GURPS. And that's why he's got all these rule sets for all these things, because they are familiar with the GURPS rules and they want to use those. And understanding that, Steve and I said, your GURPS players are not going to convert to Traveller. Right, he said. Well, let's do a Traveller for GURPS. And he said, sure, let's. And kind of like a fist bump. And it went from there. And they did dozens of really good Traveller products for GURPS. And from a business standpoint, yes, we recruited those people into our camp. But from a gaming standpoint, we made it possible for those people who were not going to change their rules in their minds to be exposed to Traveller, and they enjoyed it. They made clearly, Steve Jackson made enough of those books that there were people there that were buying them, and we all came out ahead. I think we see the same thing with 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. There's people who say, I don't want to learn a new rule set. I want to use 5th edition. Well, fine. I mean, we're still going to give them rules on things like how to generate planets and other stuff. That's fine. But we're going to bring them in, and they're going to be exposed to something besides fantasy role playing. And some of those people will become dedicated Traveller people. And we all come out ahead because of that.
People, I think, well, the initial rub was there was a misunderstanding that Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro was involved. Then there was some other, people's big complaint is, how am I going to take a classless system and shoehorn it into, something like D&D that has classes?
Sure, well, I'm anxious to see how he does it.
Yeah, well, it's doable. I mean, they tried it, I guess, in the D20 Traveller. I didn't see any horrible about that system. I have a copy of it. And yeah, I think as many different systems as care to be licensed will make the total addressable market bigger and reach places where Traveller doesn't traditionally penetrate into the fantasy
right.
market.
But
we know by our own experience, by being former in the fantasy market, but yearning for sci-fi, maybe this can be a bridge to bring those people.
And Traveller's the answer. I mean, we've seen we have Star Frontiers, which was trying to do a D&D in space. They could try it, but the answer is Traveller. Traveller addresses what we need to know, and then you work from there. Anything else is either imitating Traveller or trying some other way that we've already proved really doesn't work as well as the Traveller approach works.
How are we going to handle the confusion between T5 and Traveller 5e?
I have no idea. If people are confused and buy Traveller 5th edition, I suppose I can live with that.
All right, fair enough. Um, and what do you have planned for the 50th anniversary of travel?
Oh my goodness. Um, I mentioned that Mongoose is looking at a facsimile set. I mean, I've talked to them. I don't know the full plans. My suggestion was that they make a box with a bunch of those little booklets in for people who weren't exposed to them once upon a time. And uh, there's already this Free Trader Beowulf history of Traveller out. They're working on Shannon Applecline. I actually talked to him last week. He's working on another volume in that, which basically talks about each of these little books and why it was there and what it was for and how people responded to it. So there's some books about the history of Traveller. There's some facsimile stuff. The rest of the plans, they haven't been announced yet. I don't know what they all are.
But what are your personal plans? I mean, you don't come up on a 50th anniversary of a successful product every day.
I've
You
talked
give
to.
yourself a pat on the back, or are you gonna
Yep, I'm just
have a little
gonna
party, attend some conferences?
I'm going to go some conventions. I go to GameholeCon in Madison, Wisconsin in October. There's TravellerCon in Pennsylvania in October as well. I'm probably going to go to it next year. Conventions are where I get to sit and talk to people and enjoy doing that. I want to go to Gen Con. I want to go to Origins. Mongoose has invited me to one of the shows in England. It's just there are two kinds of people I want to talk to. The people who don't know anything about Traveller, and I want to talk to them. And if they are at all interested, I'll bend their ear for as long as it takes. That's one thing. But the other is the people who've been loyal followers of Traveller for years, and they tell me their stories, and I love hearing about what they've done and how, if not for Traveller, they would still be, in some minimum wage job, but instead they're an astrophysicist with a PhD because they really got into science because of Traveller. And I agree. I'm the reason. They had that spark within them, and I'm glad that Traveller was what kind of caught fire for them. But these people, I'm pleased, I'm happy, I'm flattered that they talk about it. But every one of those people, I can just hear the professionalism and the imagination and the interest and the zeal, everything that they have that made it work, and help fulfill their lives, help make it happy, make life happy for them, and that's really fulfilling, and that's part of what the stories I want to hear.
Must be very rewarding.
It is. It's some of them are all the same, and each one is different. And it's always somebody is really happy with their life, and it kind of caught fire because they were, and it's simple things like they weren't doing anything in school, and they got this, and all of a sudden they knew math stuff that I wasn't afraid to show a fifth grader, and a fifth grader was not unable to understand because he cared about it. Early
That might
on,
be people's first exposure to the distance formula.
Yes, or vectors. I've heard that time and again where about vectors as this high school science teacher. Yeah, and so the Traveller community is a great community. And we did something. We looked at it early on about what the reading rate was. This stuff is written at the 11th or 12th grade level, and kids just pick it up and read it because they want to know. Right, same way with D&D. It's not just Traveller. I won't just say that it's Traveller. It's the entire hobby that we're in. That kids that can't read anything and don't care about anything will pick up Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons and read it at that rate and memorize the stuff and care about it, and it works for them and they're better off for it.
Absolutely. So when you meet a person who's never heard of Traveller, what's your elevator pitch?
You know what Dungeons and Dragons is, right? Yeah. Well, it's like that, except in space. You mean on a computer? No, it's on paper, and you sit across from them and you talk. Oh, yeah, I've always wanted to try that. Well, you should try it. That's the first thing. But it's always been Dungeons and Dragons dominates the market. That's true. That's what people get into. It's like Monopoly. It's like magic. That there are other things, but if you get into that, you either like it or you don't. If you like it, then you're my prospect too. Because if you care about science fiction, this is a great way to do it. If you care about games, role-playing games, and you're interested in science fiction, this is a great way to do it. And I know that it's an approachable system for them. My goodness, when we started doing games, it was just strange people playing games because we enjoyed it. And now you not only feel comfortable, you feel like your children want to play it with you. Your grandchildren want to play it with you. And what better way to interact with your children or your grandchildren than across the table playing role-playing, where we kind of lose this grandfather-grandson thing. And it's we are people, and we get to be ourselves. And the child gets to interact on an adult level with us, and we get to see them developing and maturing and doing things. And you get to interact with your children in ways that you never would just talking to them. I remember that I was playing with my two grandchildren, and it just drops away on that I'm the grandfather. It's just I'm telling them what to do, but they're having to negotiate with somebody, and they can't shoot them. They have to negotiate with them, and they're trying to use their 8 or 9-year-old logic to make this alien do what they want them to. And it's great to see how their minds work, and great to see how their minds develop.
Yeah,
And that's in addition to all the fun of playing this ourselves and dealing with puzzles and organizing information and enjoying what we're doing.
it really can be a fun family activity. I recently ran into some people over on the Traveller Discord who were just getting into Traveller, and they didn't have any GM, and one of them lived overseas, and then the other two were in Canada. And it was like a father and his son, his 12-year-old son, I guess, and then the father's sister. And it was funny because I always like to see like adult siblings, like they bicker and stuff that they've been doing their whole life. But it's funny to like see the family dynamics, because the kid actually had like the guy who had the guns and stuff that they were doing Death Station, and they all had a different way. The sister wanted to stop and investigate every room in the station. Mm-hmm. And the father wanted to just rush through and finish the mission. And the kid wanted to find monsters to fight. And then just seeing them all, the family interacting together and enjoying themselves. And then I got to facilitate that. It made me feel proud. And I don't know, it was interesting. I don't have, my younger siblings are all grown up now. And so I don't have a lot of kids to play Traveller with. But I've been thinking about maybe going around to we have a gaming club in town that actually has like a clubhouse. Yeah. And they have all kinds of games, and they actually have Traveller on the shelf. And I've been meaning to like help them sell that Traveller book off the shelf by building some excitement for it. So maybe I'll go on one of these family nights and host a game.
That'd be fun.
Do that, yeah. So I went to the community and I asked them asked them to give me some questions to ask. If you could ever meet Marc Miller, what would you ask him? So you're ready to get into those.
Oh, sure. This will be
All
fun. Let's see if I know the answers.
right. There were some questions that I had prepared, but some of the community questions covered that, so I didn't want to ask those and then step on these folks' questions. So, but before we jump into the questions, I just want to say, because this came up again and again in the community, thank you for creating this game that's brought, so much enjoyment, curiosity, and inspiration to so many people.
Yeah,
It's really
you know,
a lot of people wanted to express their thanks to you. So.
I want to say that this was a team effort. That I like to say, oh, I invented this. I'm the inventor. I'm the designer. Yes, thank you. But there are parts of it where I just bumped into a roadblock, or I got a suggestion. John Harshman was one of our people, and he's the one who said, you can't just make lists of monsters. I mean, that's untenable. You need to base it on science. So let's have a hierarchy with a apex predator and the various ecological niches. And it's in there. And on the one hand, it isn't used a lot. But anybody who's playing Traveller who ends up having to be in some jungle or desert or something and needs a monster, there are tables to do it, and the tables make sense instead of it just being another Tyrannosaurus Rex with being green instead of brown. So
yeah, no, those are brilliant. The animal encounter tables and being able to like build your own alien animals.
Yeah, and
amazing.
I love it. I think it's great. It was somebody else made that suggestion to me because I was puzzling. How do I make a list as long as my arm of this stuff? Lauren Wiseman did great development work on so many things. He ran the Journal of the Traveller's Aid Society for Traveller for GDW for 20 years. And then he turned around and ran it for Steve Jackson Games for another 20 years. And he's filled with insights and stories and understandings of everything about not just Traveller, but the world and gaming and everything else. So there were some people who really did significant contributions to make Traveller a team effort that we all enjoy.
Well, thank you to all of them, whoever's still around and listening. We have our first question comes from Reddit. PB Scoops asks, what's the status of the follow-up novel to Agent of the Imperium?
Oh, my goodness. Well, there's so many answers that I don't have. I'm working on it. I know what it is. I'm working on it. I know what it is. I have to get some answers firmed up in my own mind before I can go too far, but it's a dark story about why the Imperium hates psionics, which is great because if you notice from the first story that we don't hate psionics, we just think it's kind of silly. And by the time but that's set.
So do you have
400 years before the current time in Traveller? And somewhere in that time, about 800, were the psionic suppressions. And we learned that psionics is just distasteful and evil, and the Imperium hates it. And I'm trying to tell that story. But
do you have the story already outlined?
I know what the story is. It's a fun, rousing, dark story. So
awesome. All right. Our next question comes from Mike on my Discord. He says, or he asks, Traveller was originally conceived as a generic sci-fi RPG before the Imperium setting. Can you talk about that original version and how it might apply to different sci-fi settings today?
I wanted it to be GURPS. I wanted it to be the science fiction setting that would handle any science fiction. But, Dungeons and Dragons doesn't, it purports to be generic, but it's not. It doesn't care. It doesn't, there are a lot of fantasy stories that D&D does not work with well. I think there's a strong argument that Dungeons and Dragons is Lord of the Rings role-playing. The problem with Lord of the Rings is in the entire story, I think Fireball is thrown once. And most players of a game like this don't want to be restricted to one absolute climax of everything they built to. They want to use the fireball to light the campfire every day. They want to use that magic. And Dungeons and Dragons evolved from faithful to Lord of the Rings to appealing to what people wanted to play, which is they wanted to have a lot of magic. They wanted to have powerful Conan-esque like barbarians. And so the rules evolved to give them that. And I think the same thing happened with Traveller. The Traveller was originally envisioned, not knowing any better, to be able to do everything. But science fiction writers not only have as many star drive systems as there are writers, but they also don't define them very well. And so we had to decide on one star drive system that worked. We had to decide on a place where we're not all constrained by a government that tells us what to do. That's the problem with military role playing is how do you do good military role playing if you have somebody above you who tells you what to do and you have to follow their orders? It's not as easily played as you want it to be. So Traveller, just like Dungeons and Dragons, Traveller evolved into an understandable interstellar empire, especially on the fringes, with lots of problems and enemies and enough communication difficulties that you had freedom to act as you wanted without people interfering. And that's how we evolved. And of course, I think Traveller has evolved very well. It gives people what they want. It's a story of an empire that is interesting. And it corresponds to a lot of the empires that we know out there, the Honor Harrington, the Honorverse, Ender's Game, all of those things have the ability to be played by Traveller because it's trying to make it easy to understand and easy to play.
It is that flexible. I mean, you don't have to play the official setting at all. I've always played in my own setting because, well, it's easier for me to remember.
Yeah.
It makes more sense to me,
And if you have your own setting, more power to you.
But it's based on the regular, it's a benevolent Imperium, just like a,
I like
Traveller Empire, and
I like to talk about Foundation, Asimov's Foundation. They've got that on Amazon Prime for a while, or Apple TV, I guess.
I saw it. I caught a few episodes in Apple, and while it wasn't exactly like the books, I don't care about that. I thought it was excellent still.
But it's based on Asimov's Traveller campaign.
Yeah, right. Did you was that a big influence, or was that something that when you were making Traveller, you thought to yourself, I could do Foundation in this. I could do.
I was more influenced by.
I could do Doomerest.
Yeah, I was more influenced by Doomerest. I've come to the conclusion that, so you guys are going to have to look it up if you don't know what's going on. But Doomerest is wandering around in a dystopic galaxy that there isn't an interstellar government, And I really have come to the conclusion that Doomerest's universe is a failed Foundation universe where the Foundation didn't happen. And indeed, they are in that long 40,000 year long night. And those are common concepts. I mean, it's not like Foundation is a brilliant new concept. It's a concept that most people would think of how a galactic empire works. Doomerest is another version of how somebody would come up with a galaxy-wide human society. Traveller does the same thing. We try to make it, you can make it fit anything you want.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about Foundation is it also kind of just abstracts down to like time capsules. People used to do time capsules all the time. And in the case of Foundation, it's like this time capsule is going to help us survive in the future, and I mean, that's
Oh,
really simplified, but
yeah, but oh my goodness, I mean, how the hubris, the overweening pride to think I can tell the future how they can live a better life than they're having, you know? And of course, you open the capsule and it says, because the pirates are just invaded. And you say, what pirates? I don't see any pirates.
all right, yeah. All right, well, here's question number three. Reddit user Count Backwards asks,
Oh, yes.
where did the core ideas for Traveller come from? Things like the skills, the life path, character creation, UWP patrons.
Um, I was translating D&D first edition into my own idea of what a role-playing game ought to be. And it was clear that if we were doing a technological society, we had to have skills. It's easy to overlook that if you're just dealing with people who are farm boys or scullery maids or squires, because, you buy a sword and you start fighting, and you practice and you're better. But they didn't have skills. If I were doing it, I would have skills. I would have farming or animal husbandry or blacksmithery. I would have those skills, but that's not what D&D was. Trying something different. We were trying to reproduce a technological society. I think that the most important part of it is the idea of tech levels, that you can have worlds that are 0 and you can have worlds that are 10 or 12 or 15. And to some extent, that's just like we have today. I mean, my town, on the one hand, has got a reasonable tech level, but we don't build cell phones here. So we're going to have to go to a higher tech level city to build cell phones. We use them, but the Lifepath system I touched on briefly, trying to make it so that it was a process we could do to improve ourselves before we actually start playing. And it's an essential part of fiction is that you can't have plot without character development. And we have to spend the first third of our novel learning who this character is before we care about him to start that story. Well, the first third of role-playing is that character generation process. And by the time you're done with it, you care about your character. And now we can start playing. And you're invested in him or her or it.
Yeah. What made you come up with like I think that the compressed and encoded information that you put into like the UWP and was brilliant. Like was a brilliant, idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you. It was brilliant.
How did you come up with why did you settle on hexadecimal and why did you choose those particular aspects to describe a planet or a system?
Um, Doc Smith's Lensman series has a coding system of describing space warships. And, and he says he kind of never really fully explains it, but, there's a letter for size and a letter for the guns and all that sort of stuff. And it goes from A or 1 to A and to Z, and after he's kind of waved his hand and said that, then we learn, we encounter a terribly big, powerful space battleship called the Z9M9Z. And clearly it's the highest letters in that thing. And it immediately tells you that it's big and powerful. And I thought, I like that idea. And I wanted to do that too. And so I tried to do that with Highguard. It wasn't especially successful, but that's the sort of thing I wanted to do. I like lining up my numbers in columns, and especially if I have multiple characters, I want to have, here's a character and all their strengths in a row and all their dexterities in a row. And if you get above 9, they get messed up if you just make a string. And so, okay, I had just taken a course in Fortran and I learned hexadecimal, so I did that. And then, of course, we did the extended because hexadecimal wasn't enough. Now we go up to Z on it. So, but nevertheless, I wanted people to look at a string and intuitively know how good or how bad it was. And all of that trying to make, it's not like I was perfect because we had the universal personality profile for people and the universal planetary profile for worlds. Now that's not very smart,
Right.
Look up the UPP. So indeed, we went to the UWP for worlds later, but it certainly wasn't perfect the first time through.
Cool. And what gave you the idea for patrons? Why was patrons such an important part of Traveller?
That was working with Lauren Wiseman, and we wanted to do stories. And it really turned into, we wanted to do, for some reason, you meet some guy in a bar and he wants you to go, that's the story of, how many movies are there where you meet somebody in a bar and he wants you to go do something and you do it? And it's this whole adventure or story or whatever in some movie. It's a time-honored way of doing things. And so we kind of had a patron. I'd worked with Lauren Wiseman on that. Then he took the ball and ran with it when he did the supplement, 76 patrons, pick an arbitrary number. Here's a guy. And on one hand, it seems terribly random. Here's a guy in a bar or in a Traveller's Aid Society hotel or something, and he wants you to do something. And then there are 6 totally different reasons. He really wants that big diamond. It's a scam. He's trying to have you smuggle something else.
It's actually a data crystal or something.
Yeah. And but when in that movie, when you watch it and the guy says, I want you to go get the diamond from somewhere, you don't know if he's real or not. You don't know if you have no idea. It's just you have to take it on faith that it's something. Are you prepared for it to go wrong? Are you? Because
is it legit? Are you being played? Right.
There is no one answer.
Right.
And it's really testing your own ability to pivot if you can respond as things go wrong or go south.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Count Backwards also asked, why is jump travel 1 week? How did you arrive at that specific assignment decision?
Now, I came up with that before I saw Star Wars, but Star Wars bothered me after I saw Star Wars. Why? How does Luke get in this fight? And now he's on a desert planet. How long does that take? How long did it take? It's never been satisfactorily answered to me how he got somewhere in a fighter pilot on a plane to the jungle planet and met Yoda.
And he went there in a fighter.
In a fighter, you have to go to the bathroom. There's a limited time. I mean, even sleeping, dozing, there's a limited time. How much time does it take to get somewhere? So I picked a week. This is what it basically takes. Now, a lot of it's trade and commerce. And so a week to get there and then a week on the planet to fix things and buy new stuff and get new fuel. But a week, 2 weeks to get somewhere and then start your next voyage. It just seemed to make accounting easier. But it also gave us then a benchmark that if it takes 2 weeks, a week in jump and a week of refueling and doing stuff, all of a sudden we know how long it takes to get information from one place to another. It's a lot of fun to build your universe based on these facts that we picked. Otherwise, I can go to the other side of the galaxy in a day. Does that work? No. totally different universe, isn't it? Even the Enterprise doesn't get somewhere in a day. They're cruising all the time. So I had to pick something and I picked that number. And a month was too long, a day was too short, a week seems about
Yeah,
right.
week seems good. Also, I'm just thinking in my head like a week is like a road trip.
Yeah,
It's kind of like a standard trip time.
yeah, yeah.
When you're taking a trip, you don't want to spend more time traveling than you
And,
are at the destination, right?
now it makes sense, and our players agree, and they say, "Yeah, that works." What they don't like is that the computer weighs 2 tons. But and I keep arguing with one because even how big a computer do you need? And they say, "Oh, I can get it in a notebook. It's like this." Right. Well, we're building 3-story high data centers now that consume mountains of electricity enough to affect the cost of electricity, and they use all the water in a town. And all this purpose is to make us be able to expand the edges of our drawings a little bit, but we forgot to make it big enough. So all of a sudden, big computers are indeed the way things work.
Right. I've always told people, well, if you ever go to like an office, the computer, the server room is a room. It's still
Uh-huh.
a room.
That's still a
And
room.
yeah, and if we're talking about a computer system that runs a starship, and life support and every kind of thing on there, it's not going to be at a laptop.
Right.
So I've never had an issue with some people are like, well, we have more computing power in our cell phone. Well, that's not really true. If you put your cell phone in airplane mode, now how useful is it?
Very good. Good point. Good point.
Because most of the computing happens outside of your phone. Um, but anyway, let's get on to the next section, which is Imperium and setting design. Reddit user Traditional Knee asks, if you were designing the Third Imperium today, would you make it smaller and more detailed or keep it vast enough?
It has to be that big so that we have something far away that's the center of power that we can ignore because they're far away. If we made it smaller, then those people in charge would be meddling in our affairs all the time.
Yep.
Now, but if I changed it, so I envision a time 1,000 years from now, after the big empires have collapsed, and the wilds have grown, and so we have some centers of civilization like Regina or Capital or Vland, but between them are sectors of chaos or dystopia, and that's an interesting thing where people are very happy to live in the Regina subsector and trade up along from Regina up to a Fate and back. And that's fine. Even then, there's some pirates once in a while, but it's okay. But smart people don't go outside of this subsector because there's no law, there's no navy, there's no order. That's an interesting time. But you have to be willing to take that risk. And I think, my experience is that when I have a war in the travel universe, everybody goes somewhere else. They don't want to be in the war. They want to be in another sector that doesn't have a war and that's at peace, and we can just buy some goods low and sell them high and make some money, and occasionally have some adventures. So
My players have always just wanted to be on the fringe of things. They don't like to be meddled with, not because they're space murder hobos, but just because they want to do their thing without somebody above them telling them they can't.
right. I mean, it sounds a lot. It sounds lots of fun to go adventuring in the American Wild West, Except there are some stories in Gunsmoke where guys just camping out on the prairie, and then somebody else rides up to him and they talk for a while, and then the one guy shoots the other one and goes on,
Right.
and you end up dead.
Yep.
And I don't like that. I'd rather stay
Right.
in Dodge and maybe run the hardware store and, yes, Mrs. Smith, do you need some more flour?
Um, the next question is from Reddit user Jeebus Xmas. He asks, what are a few things about the Third Imperium that you would change or approach differently today?
Boy, I'm so wedded to the Imperium that I just, okay, I wish we didn't have the wave, you know, but I long ago committed that when we publish something, that I'm stuck with it, and I have to explain it, or I have to accept it and make use of it. And a lot of people wish we didn't have the wave, and I still kind of think that maybe there's some way I can have a grandfather device that will just make it not work or whatever. That's fine. I wish we didn't have the wave, but Imperium is filled with things that people are still mining and getting and enjoying and writing about. I mean, the Traveller Wiki just goes on forever about people filling in the holes. The Traveller Map from Joshua Bell is just a wonderful resource where I can dump my own information in and make custom sectors if I want to. I can just print those in so many different formats and sizes. I look at it all the time. So for me to change things, I don't think I would.
Fair enough. From my Discord, Ray Eileen Varg asks, what one event would you personally want to see happen, Trevor?
In Traveller, what
Yeah,
event?
like what event? Maybe like a imperial coronation, or maybe you would like to see that maybe what you want to be there during the assassination of the emperor. I don't know. Is there anything you wish you could transport yourself into Traveller and witness firsthand?
Yeah, well, big events. I mean, in the middle of the Age of the Imperium, where we have the assassination of the false emperor and the installation of Arvalatra. I mean, that's a wonderful, interesting time and celebration and plan. And in terms of being there, I would like to be a little duke standing on the side and watching it all, knowing what was going to happen and watch it all happen. I kind of position myself over next to the throne, but not quite in the line of fire.
Your Excellency, could you lean to the left?
I have my phone. I
Perfect.
have my phone out, filming it.
Um, let's see. Reddit user Ian Thal asks, can you share more about Uncharted Space and how Galaxiad elements like the SRA and the Hydrogen Society are?
Wait. Okay, so
The SRA are showing up in a Traveller game that I've been playing for the last year.
I really. We're going to go up. He's sending me off on a tangent here, so we're going to talk about this. So, one of the problems with Traveller is there is so much lore. I could do 3 or 4 or 5 sessions just getting people ready to know about this universe. Now, instead, what we do is we play, and it kind of unfolds as they go. But I have this idea, and now we're going to talk about my comic book idea, that I want to take a comic book and see if I can find one here, and just leave it on the table. And then if so, I can't, yeah, okay, see. And somebody will pick it up you're talking with one, you're the referee and the one player is doing something, somebody else is sitting there. And so you can pick this up and you can find out what it's like inside of Beowulf. I mean, things that I couldn't tell you easily, but then all of a sudden you're interested in whatever it is, and it becomes part of the gameplay because your players know something about it. I think that so I have two series I'm working on. One is Beowulf, because everybody gets in a ship. And so why are there Beowulfs? What does it mean? Where did the name come from? How big is the ship? What's it look like inside? All those things. Who are the crews? Some pre-generated crews. Where do they go? How does trade work? I mean, the books are full of that stuff, but this is going to kind of talk you through it in a comic book form because everybody knows how to read a comic book.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed that a lot of folks don't realize, I don't know how important it is, but like these ship designs within the context of the setting have been around for 1,000 years and aren't really changed.
Right.
And that's how reliable they are.
And then it talks about how, let's see if I can find it there. So it talks about, I can't see it when I do it, but the guy's talking and he says, originally they were just cargo ships and people kind of slept in the hallways. And so somebody stuck a camper on the top, and literally what the Beowulf looks like is that somebody slapped a camper on the top for staterooms, and they did. And that's where we got that idea for that ship. It's a nice, and as you say, people don't think about that. Well, the comic book idea is what does that. So I have this concept that we'll do some comic books and tell you all about the Beowulf. We'll do some comic books and we'll tell you, let's see if I can, the story of the ancients. I mean, that'd be fun to know, where did grandfather come from and why was he important and how did that happen and where did he learn everything he did and all that there. Then, who were the adversaries in the ancient war? I mean, the story there. So, and imagine these laying on the table, and in a spare time,
really easy, digestible form to learn the lore.
Right. We talk about the abyssals who aren't even close to where the empire is, but interesting to see. And you just mentioned the SRA. I have them here. The robot invaders from the trailing reaches or whatever. And the black ships. I keep talking about the black ships, and nobody knows what they are because I haven't told you yet, but that's fun. So concepts, things I'm trying to do to put together. I'm going to have a Kickstarter on the Beowulf things later this year. I think that it just gives it gives us the players more things to do, and they don't have the big book to work from. It kind of makes it easier for them to think about doing trade and commerce. Think about how they should, what steps they take when they land in a world and when they take off from a world. By explaining those in the comic book format of a sentence and a picture, everybody, we're working on the same page. That's good. Now we have something in common.
Right. Yeah. That's everybody has their own image of what's going on in their mind, even though it's a shared,
And then another one I'm working at is like a guide to small craft. I mean, look at that. It'd be,
yeah, that's cool.
And they just, a lot of the stuff's already in the game master's mind, but the players don't yet have it.
Right.
And then they have it, and because it's written down, the game master can look at it and say, "Yeah, I see how that works," and he can run it for them, make it work. Everybody's happy. It just works. It's the next level, bringing more people in and engaging them more in the shared universe that we have as Traveller.
Yes, that's a great idea. Mr. Tim from my Discord asks, is there any chance we'll see a Galaxiad source book or campaign series?
Probably not.
Probably not.
I mean, I'm working. I mean, literally the things I just ran through, the SRA and the abyssals and the hydrogens, are the Galaxiad. In that sense, they are. They're the Galaxiad. There probably won't be a source book. I end up trying to do comic book format, and yet I still have to do. Remember, the old comic books. We'd have stories, and then there would be a page of text, which I would skip over because I don't care about that. Maybe a short story or something, a description, and I'm forced to do that in these because I can't just have 8 pages where it's much more efficiently done in 1 page with a lot of text, and everybody benefits from that too. But the idea is to give you something else. It's the next step in Traveller. I mean, it's great to have a book for when I'm wandering all over the place, excuse me. What good are those pictures, those great color pictures in the book, if it's for the referee? Then he holds it up and shows you what it is. This is those pictures that help you envision what's going on, but in a comic book form that is meant to be put in front of you without giving away the plot, without giving away the details of the story.
When you sit down to play a 50-year-old game or a game that has 50 years of lore history, that can be overwhelming. So, and you're not aware of like what even is in the lore. So, by making it into these like topical pieces that are focused and easy to digest, I think people will just pick up the ones they're interested in at the time, and they won't be overloaded. They'll just maybe one player takes this part and the other player takes that part. And then after they both read it, they share what they read, and now everybody knows. And
I have one of the little panels in the comic book is talking about time and timekeeping and, traditional units of hours and minutes and seconds and all that sort of stuff. And it has a picture of this guy's group playing at a table. And it's talking about time, and it says, you don't have to count for every second. And the word balloon is, okay, you left, it took a week, your jump took a week, and you're now at your next destination. You don't have to count off every second. Boom, you're there. And you're ready for the next step in your adventure. That's just giving, I call that permission giving. Oh, I can do that. I see. It's never said anywhere else. And it's a nice piece of information. I can just say, oh, your trip took a month, and you're done. Okay, now we keep going on the fun stuff that's important instead of what did you have for breakfast on these 3 days?
I usually say, what do you guys have any like personal projects you're going to work on during the next week in jump? No, yes, okay, here we are. We're arrived then.
Yeah, they were very good. And you see, you already know that, but a new player doesn't necessarily know that.
Right. Reddit user SizeFit says or asks, why are ships so expensive to buy but relatively cheap to maintain?
You want it the other way around? Those are just.
I guess they're kind of set up to be like a car. The car is the bulk of the purchase, but then have to maintain it over time.
We're not trying to make. I try to say this sometimes about deck plans. The deck plans are not blueprints; they are schematics. That we have a little symbol for a chair. It's like if you actually look at it, it's a 5-foot square and it got a chair in the middle of it. That doesn't seem right. Is that right? It's a schematic. If I had to design a set for a movie, I would do it entirely differently. There would be other things, but this isn't a blueprint. It's not. You can't use it to build the ship, but certainly you know how to wander around and what you're doing, and that's good enough.
Yeah, I'm kind of within the close enough group.
The cost of a starship is meant to be crushing. You really have to work to get it, but once you get it, you don't want to keep being crushed.
Right.
As it is, enough people go bankrupt trying to do trade and commerce, and they have to do something. It's very finely tuned that you can't just go around and do stuff. But if you carry a full hull, cargo hold, and you have enough passengers, it's still not quite enough to make your mortgage payment. So you're going to have to do something shady in order to make the next payment.
It seems like a conspiracy because it is.
Well, it's just like,
um,
but it's valuable. It's valuable lessons. It's just like real life, you know.
mhm. Right, right. Um, I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. Ross and Jane from my Discord ask, why hasn't the tech level system been significantly revised over time? And what was the reasoning behind grouping early historical eras like bronze names?
The major change. So first of all, I have to say that originally I did not know where the tech level went. I mean, I knew where it went to 15, and 15 is pretty high and pretty hard to do, and pretty fancy. Traveller 5 defines it in detail. Doesn't it keeps the levels as they were, more or less. I mean, the lower ones are very broad swaths because how finely defined do you want? Early bronze, late bronze, middle bronze? You know, that's a little too fine a thing. Um, but Traveller 5 really tackled it and has fantastic high tech stuff at the high end. But I didn't know, when I started, I didn't know where it went. Could tech level go to 100? 1,000? I mean, what would a tech level 1,000 mean? Um, and I don't think anybody can tell you in a reasonable way what that would mean. So we went to the singularity concept when I ran out of E hex numbers up to Z, and it resets. You know, either we go on to the next plane, a higher plane. People don't go to a lower plane; go to a higher plane, or reset and go to dystopia or a pastoral society or something. Give it all up. So we did revise this text level system to what I thought worked for everybody, but we didn't really change the lower levels because I thought they were appropriate.
Okay.
Good question.
Um, yeah. Uh, a user from my Discord, Crimson Never said or asks, have you ever considered adding vertical depth to the galaxy instead of just treating it as a mostly flat plane? How would
I
you do that?
have. I have. We did that in 2300 AD. Nobody cared. It was too hard to think and too hard to do and not interesting enough. And, you know, if I look at the Star Wars maps, they're 2D. If I look at the Star Trek maps, they're 2D. That they're schematics, not blueprints of the universe. And so, you know, in a sense, we come back to has to be playable. We really put a lot of effort into making a 3D map of the universe in Traveller 2300. And it was cumbersome and not important enough for people to care.
I think the vertical trade routes would be hard. There's a program, I think if people want to do something like that, there's a program called Astro-Synthesis by a company called NBOSS. And it makes like a 3D star charts, and then you can connect all of the but like trade routes between all the planets at certain
Okay.
distances and
We
spin
use
it around however you want. And you know that could be useful for you as a GM or a fiction writer. You know,
but it takes us
I
out
don't know
of
if
being
that's
on a
practical.
tabletop. It takes
Yeah,
us out of being on a tabletop, doesn't it? You know, the literally the 2300 AD map was generated in Max Spin, which was a 3D visualizer, which we could turn and twist and see, but it doesn't add enough to be with it.
yeah. I just found that it had novelty factor at the
Yeah,
most.
yeah.
Unless you're running like I said, if you're an author and you wanted to kind of define this area that where your story takes place, I guess, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and even
Um,
then, it helps you visualize in your mind and maybe see the advantages or the vulnerabilities. But even then, it's hard for you to convey it to your readers.
That gets us to our, I think, our last section. No, our second to last section. This section is about running the game. I only have two more questions for you. Um, Reddit user Midwest Orbital asks, how do you personally run a Traveller session, and what do you focus on most at the table?
I like to do a session where I don't know what's going on. I have a situation, and the players, oh, let's find the cargo hold and see what this derelict ship had. Let's find, and they come up with their ideas and they kind of vote, and I just let them go and do what they want to do. And as a game master, you have complete control of technology and everything else. They can suggest, I'm trying to shoot the lock off, and it can go wrong, it can go right. If we're just trying to get there, shooting the lock off works. If they're being cumbersome or there's some reason, no, that was stupid. You shot the lock off, but some pieces.
The door's jammed or something.
Yeah. So, but I get to tell a lot of stories to people in the materials that we publish. I think the players are telling me stories when I play with them, and they're building it themselves. And I enjoy that because their imagination using this structure of words and rules, and how they've internalized it, and their own personalities show up.
Are you more of a rule stickler, or do you just, if it sounds fun, you just let it go?
Oh, no, whatever works. Just because the rules say it's 3D damage doesn't mean it has to be 3D damage. You make it work. They're telling me a story, and to stop them in the middle of it and say, the rules don't allow you to do that, gets in the way of the story. Now, the reason for the rules is to give us structure, that we have some idea that it takes a week to jump to get somewhere. I'm not going to say it takes you a day, but I'm not going to, and I might tell you it takes you a month, but depending on how we're trying to make this story work. It's collaborative storytelling, but they're leading the story, not me. I'm just trying to get them to the point.
So you'd say probably improvisation skills are pretty important as a GM.
But then I know the rules intimately.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not programming this in a computer. I'm using them to understand what they're trying to do. And then they say, well, how can I do this? I can say, you can try this. But sometimes we depend on the dice, because the dice are just as important to the storytelling. Oh, the dice went wrong. Well, you're going to have to fix it because, you just as you went to hit him, you slipped and fell on your butt.
User Kirill Simon, I hope I didn't mangle your name, asks, did you have a framework for creating classic Traveller adventures, and what advice would you give referees building scenarios today?
I don't know what we now mean by framework. So I did classic Traveller adventures, and our goal in each one was to give you a template on how to do that thing. So Canunir was about how to do a derelict spaceship. And the next one was Research Gamma, and was how to do a place rather than a ship, to find it and then to explore it. And then we had Trillion Credit Squadron, which is a totally different thing about build your stack of ships and then fight it out with each other, not for some political means, but to see how good you were at designing ships. Every adventure tried to be a template that you could make more adventures like that relatively easily.
Did you follow any kind of traditional story structure, like a 3 acts or the hero's journey or anything like that when you put this together? Or
I don't. I know the Digest Group tried the Nuggets thing, where they just wanted to give you information, and ultimately the information would lead you there. Most of the Traveller stories, the adventures are pretty linear, but there's no outline in that sense of 3-act or hero's journey.
Okay. Todd Zurcher from my Discord asks, "What's your favorite character career to play person?
Ask the question again.
What's your favorite character career? Like scout, or what's your favorite character class in this
Ah,
Traveller?
yeah.
Do you get to play very often, or are you mostly the
I
DM?
don't. I write a lot. I don't play a lot. Um, I was talking to somebody the other day about, there's the six character classes of classic Traveller, and then there's another 12 or 18 in Citizen of the Imperium and other stuff, and all of those have fallen by the wayside. But the merchant, scout, navy, army, those are just the essence of adventuresome careers. It's hard to pick one of the. I pick those versus the barbarian or the scientist or the professor. Those don't mean as much to me as those basic. You as a person finish your high school, your basic education, even your college, and you're going to go out into the world. And there's not an MBA character. There's not an office drone character. It's one of those things that gets you a reason that you can learn more about life, and go out and have adventures, and do things outside of just ordinary life. One of these books that I have here, these comic books, talks about becoming a starship crew member, and it talks about you start out, and the crew will help you figure out what you're doing, but then you have to do it. And if you can't self-manage and do it, then maybe this starship adventuring career isn't for you. Find an office job with government mandated benefits and
Settle down on your space farm.
and that sounds so exciting. The exciting thing is being a starship crew member and going out and seeing 1,000 worlds before you die. But the core careers are what let you do that. And I really like all of them. It's hard for me to say I pick one over the other at any one day.
All right, fair enough. I prepared 20 questions and we're on number 16, so we just got a few more.
Okay, because my time's running here.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get through. We can cut it short if you like, but we only have a few more. Um,
Okay.
Philosophy OK asks, what's your perspective on modern tools like virtual tabletops, Traveller Map, procedural generators, AI? Do they enhance the experience or change something fundamental?
Well, let's be sure that we I don't want to substitute AI for real imagination. But I turn to Traveller Map all the time because it's a wonderful compendium of the information that I created or helped create, and I can look it up and it's there for me. And in terms of an interface and in terms of a process that I can use, I use it all the time. It's brilliant. I like Wiki. Wiki is a little less rigorous because it is fan supported as well. And I read some of the stuff and I say, well, it's a little too extreme or something. But it's also, the public maintaining something that they all agree on.
Have you seen or experienced virtual tabletop?
I've seen it. Virtual tabletop is another one. I think that's lets us play with somebody instead of here, he's there, I'm here, and we can play and we can do things. Um, those don't take the place of imagination. They just give us focus. As long as that's what we're using them for, that's great.
I think it's a great invention, and I've met a lot of people from all around the world, and having like a shared tabletop to roll dice on, even if you're just using the minis and went during battles, and just using it for dice rolls and nothing else. It's a way for people all around the world. I mean, you may not be able to find somebody in your group of friends or even in your town that has the same similar schedule, maybe work night shift, but there's somebody on the other side of the world that does.
Yeah.
And you can be friends,
And
you know,
it's no different than playing Call of Duty or Gauntlet
right?
multiplayer. Um, my grandson used to play with my son, and they were 200 miles apart. And they would have the phone on and playing, and they're talking to each other and doing and whatever. And it's a great computer thing that helps us play. And those tools are all wonderful where they help us play.
Right. Um, Dice Action Fan asks, have you seen modern actual plays like Voyagers of the Jump? And what do you think of actual play as a format?
I haven't seen
Are you
it.
familiar with Critical Role?
No.
So there's a trend nowadays where people play uh, play on they live stream their game as they're playing, or they
Okay.
play it and then edit it later, and
Okay.
people enjoy watching that.
Oh, sure.
And
And that's great. I mean, I love standing. My experience is standing at a table and watching people play while they're at a convention.
mhm,
Um, I just haven't followed those online. I don't know by your explanation, I know exactly what you mean.
mhm,
And it's a form of entertainment. It's a form
mhm.
of enjoying the hobby, even though you are not ready to sit down and make those decisions. And
Right. The people behind Critical Role found wild success doing that. Um,
yeah,
and they're all like voice actors for movies or cartoons, anime or whatever. And so they were able to, they all had acting experience. And so I think that really
and
clicked with people. So how role play happens.
it's another form of reality shows. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah. Okay, now
All right.
I know I know where we're going now, and I understand. Yeah, it's a great form of entertainment. Um, and of course they edit it to tell us the story that's fun
Mhm.
rather than the tedious one where the person insisted on trying to bash the door down 5 times.
Um, from Reddit, we only have two more questions. Michael MST. Mike, people's usernames. How do you feel about the CPS engine ecosystem and how many different settings are open?
I couldn't understand what you said. Try
How
to.
do you feel? Okay, let me try to rephrase it. How do you feel about the CPS engine system
Oh, okay.
uh,
I didn't hear the word.
and all of the things it has spawned?
Um, I don't follow the system, but I have enjoyed when I have followed it. I've enjoyed what he's done, and I think he's doing a good job. You know, I think everybody should only play Traveller TM and only buy it from Mongoose. Except that's not how it works. And I don't believe it because it's all about playing. And this, you get me on my soapbox. Role playing has got to be the best hobby in the world. Gaming has got to be the best hobby. It's good, clean fun. Anybody, not only for players, but for producers. And here's somebody can decide they want to do something and they can publish it and put it out there and people buy it if it's good. And the marketplace decides. And Cepheus is out there because he keeps doing good work and people support him by buying it. And if he turned out crap, it wouldn't be out there. It wouldn't have survived this long. So,
Yeah, it's given a lot of people a way to like dip their toe into the publishing scene, but in support of Traveller or Traveller-ish, Traveller adjacent. So I've taken advantage of the. Did you feel any pressure to make an open gaming license for Traveller during the open gaming license fad?
I didn't, but Mongoose did, and they did some stuff.
All right.
And frankly, I'm glad I'm not in that end of management. He made the decisions, and I'm happy to support him in what he did. But but he's got, okay, so that's open gaming license. There's another thing we have, which I was the champion of, and I did, and we still have, and Mongoose has continued to do it, is the fair use policy. To actually say out loud what you can do recently and what aren't going to bother you with. I went through a time where people were doing Dungeons and Dragons websites, and TSR's lawyers were,
sending Pinkertons.
Yeah, and what? These people love this game. They enjoy the game, and they're publishing about it. They're talking about it, and you want to shut them down? So Traveller has had a fair use license, a fair use policy for just 30 years, and it just puts people on notice that they can play this game and talk about it and enjoy it. Good for you. And a ratification of that, Mongoose has continued. They've expanded the fair use policy for Twilight 2000 and Dark Conspiracy, just because it just makes people happy. It's the right thing to do. I mean, to stand on, to say, no, you can't play our game except this way, that's wrong.
Right. All right, we got two more questions. This next one is from Mike on my Discord, and also I kind of blended these two together. Are there additional Traveller 5 books planned? And what's ahead for Traveller as we approach the 50th anniversary?
We talked about this. There are no official Traveller 5 books planned. There are. I'll tell you, I really like Starship Geomorphs from Robert Pierce. Yeah, you got a couple of them. He's got adventure class Geomorphs. I mean, those are really worth getting for just quick thinking. It's another, well thought out process of helping you flesh out your starships. Mongoose is working on plans for 5th edition or 50th anniversary. And we'll see what they come up with. I think they've got great plans and going to be a lot of fun.
The final question. Reddit user Homer Lives asks, if you could hop in a time machine, travel back to 1996 when GDW was closing, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, man. I would have to talk to myself for like days. And,
I really am you.
We are here where we are today because of what's gone on during that time. To abbreviate that in any way would not get us to what we have now, which is the best of all possible universes. Traveller is a great, mature, positive force in the world, but it needed to go through those transitions and those evolutions to get here. There was work to be done, and there's no shortcut against good, hard work and thoughtful, imaginative work to make things right. I'm happy where we are today. And we got here because of the time that had to be spent to get there. So I'm not sure there's anything.
So you would opt not to travel back?
I think I would opt not to travel back. When I was designing Traveller, I said, okay, we're going to have characters and they're going to start aging. And so they're not going to be 18. They can be 25 or 35 or 45 or 55. And so I had to have an aging system, or you would just be still, strong and no disabilities even when you got to be 65. So I created an aging system. When I did it, I was 30. I'm 79 now. And I'll tell you, it was dead on. It just said, there's a point where you're just going to start can't do anything. You can't get better and you're going to slowly get worse. And there's nothing can stop it. I talked to a guy who had done the high jump. He was a high school PE teacher. He'd done the high jump every year since he was 12. And he said, every year you try and get better. And you reach a point where you can't get any better, and you try to be less worse, least worse as you can, but that slope still goes down inexorably. We are today because of where we were before. There's a thing about Newton talking about getting where he did on the shoulders of giants. I feel like that myself, that I wouldn't be here without Gary Gygax and David Wesley and Dave Arneson and a lot of other people who have just made this the best role-playing game in the world within the best hobby in the world. And we all enjoy doing this, not just playing, but thinking about it and reading it and following it. The people who are watching this today, Mayday is commemorating a game that we all enjoy in a hobby that we all enjoy. And I so appreciate what everybody's doing in support of all this.
Right. Well, we've reached the ends of our questions, Mark. Thank you so much for sitting for yet another long interview. But with 50 years to talk about, it's there's a lot of material there to go over.
You asked about the Traveller novel, and so there are two of the. I've got these things here, short stories. The Red Ship, and names. I've got these here, and when somebody orders and says they want one of them or both of them, they're available as free downloads anyway. But I'll send them to you when you make an order of that Far Future Far Future Enterprises, farfuture.net. There we are. Can't even remember my own website. But
I'll link it in the description so people can find it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I just love throwing stuff like that in because it's more than just the product they're buying. They're buying the experience. And we have so much of Traveller that is so much fun. And not just fun, intriguing. Watching a baseball game is fun. Traveller is an immersive experience that you can do so many things.
I always love getting, I do computer work in one of the businesses I help. It's a jewelry store, and their jewelry supply, but they always throw in some candy or like some little goodies with their order. And same thing with you. And I was like really happy. I opened up a letter I got from you, and there was like I got a nobility.
My nobilities, yeah.
Yeah, some money, some credits to spend. It was cute and nice and immersive, and I really appreciated that. That's a great idea. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Frank, this is a great experience, and I appreciate you doing Mayday every year.
Oh, absolutely. It's my honor. Thank you so much for creating this game that I've loved so much.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you, everyone watching. Thanks for being part of Mayday 2026. Until next time, happy traveling.
If you enjoyed this interview and want to explore the Traveller universe, check out Marc Miller's titles, scan the QR code, use the link on screen, or check the description below. If you enjoyed this interview, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss future episodes. Now tell me, what's your favorite Traveller edition and why? Let me know in the comments. A quick thank you to my patrons. Your support helps make events like Mayday and interviews like this possible. If you'd like to support the channel and get behind the scenes access, early content, and more, you can join us on Patreon. And to everyone already supporting, thank you. I truly appreciate it. And if you're ready for the next jump, check out one of these videos and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And I'll see you in the far future.